What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Return of the Athlete podcast. Today, I've got a really fun interview. Today is going to be a client spotlight. Melanie Richmond has been someone that I've been working with for almost 2 years now, and she has crushed every goal imaginable. And so I wanted to have her come on, talk about her experience, talk about all the amazing things that she has accomplished and the different things that she did in order to make those, more manageable and balance work and life and stress and all these really cool things like climbing mountains and half marathons. And so, Melanie, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on to share your story and share your experience.
Thanks, Paul. I'm super excited. This is my first podcast.
Yeah, it's first
It's a little
podcast
scary.
for a lot of clients. I remember Amy was on the last one. She said, "How do you podcast?" But this is, really cool medium. And I think the first place to start really would just be, what were you doing? I think 2020, early in the spring, is when we started working together. So give a little bit of background into your fitness background, your athletic background, and what you're doing before we cross paths.
Yeah. Well, we met at a really interesting time because right as the pandemic hit, my world really turned upside down. And I remember I had been listening to your podcast because I'd subscribed to it since I'd taken your classes at Barry's. And I thought it was really interesting how you said in the beginning that you worked at Amazon and now we're a trainer. And in that point in my life, I had just stopped being a trainer and working at Amazon because of the pandemic. So my background with fitness prior to working with you was that I was a personal trainer. I'd competed in bodybuilding, Emerald Cup and bikini shows. I'd done like the Toughest Mudder, just various CrossFit, tons of different stuff. But in 2016, I had a really bad car accident that really hurt my neck. And that was another thing I'd heard on your podcast. You talk about the car accident you had, and you like rebounded from that. So I wanted to work with you to learn more about how you overcame that injury, since I was really struggling with that in the moment. A lot of my exercise workouts that I like to do would trigger my neck injury. And yeah, does that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think the things that are super interesting around that is just the connection of Amazon and the connection of injuries. And it's so funny to see the people that I'll connect with and sometimes work with. Like one gal, she's like, "Oh, I like that you have cats or you have ragdoll cats. You're a coach too. Like, let's talk about working together." And, those things I think definitely play a role in understanding like the stress that you're under, both from the car accident and from your workload, and just knowing that whatever we're doing from a training standpoint and a nutrition standpoint, we have to take into account the other stressors that your system is under. And so that all makes sense. So once we started within the program, what were some of the experiences that you had? What were some of the things that you learned within the systems that we use so that you could, and we'll talk about some of the things that you accomplished and that you're really proud of, but what were some of the things you noticed right away?
Yeah, so the reason I started working with you, I got an email and advertising that you were doing a challenge, and I was like, oh, I guess I want to do that challenge. Just thinking I'd work with you for whatever amount of time that challenge was, and here we are today. But basically, right off the bat, I just realized, oh, I thought I knew how to do things, but there's a lot more that I could learn. And I think through the process of working with you, the biggest takeaway right off the bat was I know how to coach people and I've done a great job helping other people, but I've never really invested in myself in a coach. And a lot of the stuff that you do with me are things I've done with other people, like forcing them to track things in a tracker and asking a lot of the same questions. But it's very hard to just sit down and ask yourself those questions, and having you ask them to me really just hearing myself answer my own questions and realizing there were different gaps. I realized I needed to do that and I really needed to invest in that. And that's like, I always tracked my steps and food like over the years off and on, but I never put it all in one tracker like we've done together. And now that I have like 19 months, it tells a really good story. So the value in data and storing it all in one place, having it stored in a bunch of different apps, doesn't paint as good of a picture.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's really just being able to look at almost this executive dashboard of like, here's Melanie. How is she progressing? How is she performing? How is her body doing? And you're totally right in that it's easy to tell people what to do, but then it's hard to take that advice from yourself. And I'm a big believer in coaches, having someone mentor you. Here's so that you said this was the first coach that you'd ever had.
Oh, I did say that, but that's it's not true. But I've had bodybuilding coaches, posing coaches. It's the first coach I've had where like they made me do something like this, where we had a tracker. I've worked with different trainers, and I've had people write programs and like look at my food diaries, but you really take all of the things. And I think the component of like talking about stress and talking about sleep and like holistically looking at it all versus having like one posing coach, one person writing my diet, like none of those people communicating with one another. I no longer see value in that. And then also in the past, I would hire too many. Well, that's part of what I'm saying. I'd have too many coaches and they kind of contradict each other, telling me to do different things. And it would lead to a lot more stress. So I really put all my trust in you. And I, during our time together, didn't work with anyone else at all. And one thing I've really appreciated working with you is that if I ask you a question, you answer it. And I have a lot of questions, as you know. But in the past, I remember asking like my bodybuilding coaches, and they'd just say, because I said so. And I'd tell them I was feeling really terrible, and they'd say, well, you shouldn't be feeling that way, like or this is how you're supposed to feel. You're working like if you're doing the workouts and you're on a diet, it's not supposed to be fun. But one thing really interesting you helped me realize, there was a time during the challenge everyone was saying they were feeling so awesome, and I said to you, I don't feel good. I'm like, I'm doing all your workouts and I actually feel awful. Like everyone's coming in and saying they feel great and I don't. And you encouraged me to go get my blood work done. And I found out that my iron and B12 were really low. And that's something that's come up a few times throughout my training, but now I know what that feels like. And I know how to fix it. And that's why I've implemented a spinach smoothie every morning. It's not really like my favorite breakfast, but it's what makes me feel the best. And all of that helps me so that I can do my workouts and feel really good, because it's really discouraging when I'm giving 100%, it feels like 200% to my workouts and following a program to a T, but just feeling awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big believer in not believing no pain, no gain. If something doesn't feel right, that is a sign. If you're in pain, that is a sign from the body to go and address that. And there's definitely times where you should be uncomfortable. There's times where you're definitely pushing, but I think understanding the difference between pushing through resistance and grinding through friction is a fine line, but being able to delineate that in kind of what you were talking about with the data and with, maybe getting a blood test is something that I would always encourage to make sure that we're solving for the appropriate thing. Because if you go and, supplement with a bunch of supplements that you don't actually need before you identify that, oh, I need more B12 or I need more iron, then you're just creating more problems that didn't exist in the first place, or at least creating more complexity, which we don't want to create complexity. We want it to be simple. It'll be hard sometimes, but it should be simple. So, curious for you, what would you say over the last 19 months that you're most proud of, or some of the, again, you've done so many cool things. So, what would be some of the highlights for you?
It's really hard to pick just one thing because we've definitely done a lot together. It feels like 10 years. Um, but the biggest thing overall is just changing my mindset, and through all this data, that's what helped me see like the beliefs that I had in my head weren't about myself weren't true, because now I have all this data, and like data is more factual information. There's certain things that you've said that have really stuck with me along the way that have helped me to do this, and like one of them is think, speak, do. I hope I'm saying that right. I think that's it. But yeah, and like a lot of the times the thoughts don't align with like the actions. And I've read a lot of books as we've gone through this too, and like listened to a lot of podcasts, which kind of like mirror and back up the work we do together. So it's been a big evolution, and looking at like the fun part has been the fitness goals you've helped me achieve, which are like summiting mountains. My mountaineering I've gotten into, my first half marathon, now training for high rocks, like getting stronger in the gym, all of that. But that's not as powerful, and it's just not as exciting for me as the changing of the mindset, because now after the 19 months of working together, I feel like I can do anything. And that just like, I just feel like a completely different person um, inside. And it's hard to put that into words.
Yeah. That's that's what I love about fitness is it's a vessel and really a way to push yourself to grow in other areas. And it's not always the easiest thing to articulate, but I think you did such an amazing job there of being like, yeah, like the fitness goals, and sometimes for other people it's the weight loss or it's the building muscle, and it's like, but what you learn and what you experience and what you gain out of that process is so much more. And I'm big on just promoting that your fitness and your health should really amplify other areas of your life. And it sounds like that's really been your experience, to where now I actually have full belief in you that if you wanted to go conquer the world you could, because you've conquered mountains, and that's pretty sick.
Thank you. And I appreciate you always believing in me, even when I haven't believed in myself. That's been really helpful and powerful. It's especially during this pandemic, it's been a super isolated time, and I've had a lot of time alone to really analyze this data. And it's been a really like, a lot of people don't say this, but I kind of look at the pandemic as a blessing, because it's
Mm.
helped me just like reprioritize my life and really see what matters. But there's a couple things that we look at on the tracker that really stick out. So, I mean, like I said, I've done bodybuilding, and so transforming my body and like having the motivation to work out and knowing how to work out, which is probably what a lot of clients come to you for, isn't really something I struggled with. I love to work out. It's like, and we've talked about this a lot too. Sometimes you're like, don't do like 2 workouts in a day. You need to rest. So that's kind of not the most value of the data that I was seeing, but it's like the stress and the energy and the sleep, tracking that. And then what I would do, like as I'd fill out, and also as I'd reflect on it, like without you, I'd ask myself what's causing the stress, kind of like why I'm not sleeping, what can I do to make it better? And from there, it's like, it's led to like a whole shift of the relationships in my life. In the past couple of years, I would say like I've eliminated a lot of toxic relationships, which has led to a lot of isolation, which has been hard, but overall is what's helped me transform. And that's also reduced my stress level dramatically. And then focusing on my sleep. And it's actually kind of funny, because to my clients, I always preach this acronym: SPEED: sleep, psychological health, environment, exercise, and diet. And that's like the order of importance. And I know sleep is important, but I didn't really think about like quality of sleep, and like being in bed 8 hours versus actually like hitting REM 8 hours. So now I have you inspired me to not sleep with my phone in my room, which I remember like, how do you do that? Don't you not wake up to the alarm? And it's like right outside my door, like, how am I not going to not wake up? But it's funny how you convince yourself in your head, like, oh, it's not possible, but it's very, very easy and everyone should do it.
Yeah, it's funny. I might look back, 50 years from now, and it'll be like on my tombstone, what was your contribution to the world? And it would be like, encourage people to put their phones outside of the bedroom, or at least away from the nightstand, because it seriously, it makes such a difference. I'm telling you, if you're listening to this or watching it, do not charge your phone on your nightstand. Put it in a bathroom, put it somewhere where you can't reach it, can't see it. I promise you, you will wake up, but you will not get all the downside of having it next to your bed.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably my biggest takeaway. I didn't realize how powerful that would be. My dreams are more vivid, my energy, like I wake up, I go to bed. I used to like fall asleep, have a hard time falling asleep. So I put like Netflix app on my phone because my thoughts would go crazy. But I realized that actually makes your thoughts go even more. And now before I go to bed, my mind is blank, but it's so relaxing. It's like a complete meditative state. And I wake up that way too. The
That's
other
awesome.
thing you've taught me too is you said something like everyone's balance is different. What's balance for one person's like not the same for others. And I that was really helpful to me and powerful, because most people around me will call me like pretty intense, and sometimes I feel a lot of judgment because I just live a very fast-paced lifestyle. Like yesterday I was like 32,000 steps. Like I went for a run, I went on a hike, I went to yoga. That was my day off, and that was really fun for me. um, I like to just do a lot of things every day and it feels good, but often people will say that's extreme, that's not balanced. And throughout working with you, I've stopped caring what other people think. And I really have. Like I just don't put so much value on that. It's more like, this is what makes me feel good, and that's really all that matters. And if that's too much for other people, uh, that doesn't matter. And then also, usually the people saying that those things are not people I would want to be like. So that helped me realize like that didn't matter at all.
Hmm. Yeah, I think balance. It looks different for different people, and it looks different for different people at different times. Like I know me with the house and High Rocks previously, and everything that I got going on. I'm like, man, like I need to pull back. Whereas other times I'd be like, I got plenty of time, plenty of energy, and it's just different seasons. And so I think that's what's been really cool with you is seeing all the different seasons multiple times for you and being able to say like, hey, slow down. Hey, you can go a little bit harder. Hey, slow down. Usually it's slow down because you you can do so much in a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that that's the takeaway because it's overlooked, but in this conversation, that's what you're remembering of 19 months, right? It's not form for a push-up. It's not this breakfast that you're supposed to have. It's something as simple as what is balance for you and that it's unique to you. Curious for you,
Yeah.
what's next?
I'm gonna do High Rocks. I don't even know how that happened. It's so interesting because like I was becoming a mountaineer when we first started, and I didn't even know what mountaineering was. And I signed up for this mountaineering trip. I just thought hiking, mountaineering, camping, like all the same thing. They're not. Learned how to like belay and hang off a mountain. And then through doing that, that was super awesome. Kind of somehow became a runner during that process, did a half marathon, and then hearing how High Rocks went for you. And I had already known like from the Live Better retreat and all that, like Jason and Brett talking about it and just seeing it. My boss's girlfriend actually does High Rocks as well. I feel like just a lot of people around me are doing it, and now I want to do it. So I'm excited to compete with you now.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun to mix it up. We'll go to Accelerate, we'll train, we'll do it, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll crush just like everything else we've done.
Thanks.
Cool. Well, Melanie, thank you so much for coming on, taking the time to share your story. And it's truly been a blessing to coach you. You make my job so fun, so easy, and you're going to continue to crush it.
Thank you.